Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar Wednesday. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Phelps, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Acumen. And today we have Plate IQ joining us to go over how you can automate your AP from invoice to bill pay. At Acumen, we're currently seeing many clients updating their AP processes, so we thought it would be a great idea to introduce Plate IQ, have them go over a demonstration on how their product works with Sage 300 and Sage Intacct. But before we begin, please note that this webinar is in listen-only mode, and if you have any questions, then please use the chat option and we'll answer near the end of the presentation. We have a lot to cover today, so I will now pass it on to Josh from Plate IQ.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you, guys. And thank you for Stephen and his whole team for allowing Plate IQ to come on and showcase our platform. And we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Let's see here. All right. So to give you guys an idea of what we're going to do, so we're going to do some intros from the Plate IQ side. I'm going to go over a little bit about who is Plate IQ. We'll do a technical demo. We'll do some Q&A, and then we'll do some closing remarks at the end. So, all right. So on the Plate IQ side, we have three of us on the line today. So Eric Liddy is going to be doing our demo. He is the director of sales. My name is Josh Burt. I'm the director of partnerships. And then we're going to have Skylar Stone. He's the senior product manager who created a new functionality when it comes to POs. So he's going to showcase a little bit about what our PO matching capabilities are too. So we are really excited for you guys to see all of this stuff. So again, a little bit about who Plate IQ is, right? So we are a leader in AP automation technology. So we were founded in 2014 to primarily help hospitality groups out improve their AP workflow. You know, currently right now we service over 30,000 locations, over 12 million invoices processed each year, representing about $10+ billion in payables. And then we've also processed over 2 billion in payments. So on average, what we see from our clients, we save about almost 5 hours on processing time utilizing Plate IQ. And on the right, here's just some logos and stuff that utilize Plate IQ. So again, talking about the end-to-end AP automation all in one platform, right? So we do the invoice ingestion, we do the bill pay, and the real cool thing about it is, as far as Plate IQ goes, that we can basically handle any robust, customizable process when it comes to AP. So, no matter if you have a large, need for AP or if it's a small need for AP, we can basically take care of all of it for you. So what are some things that Plate IQ can do, right? So obviously uploading invoices. A lot of our clients use this for a digital filing cabinet. Again, we don't purge or we don't delete any information. You can set up customized approval and routings. We have an instant capture capability where you can capture the invoice. Again, PO matching we're going to go over today. And the real cool thing about it is we are one of the only AP automation tools that are strictly driven by the actual the AI functionality, right? So when we will showcase all of that for you. So we are really excited. I'm not going to cover a lot of this stuff because we're going to cover during the demo, but again, vendor and spend management, we do have capabilities of that, which we'll cover. And more importantly, Plate IQ and plus Sage, right? So what data goes into, right? So we do all the general ledger coding, line item cost and quantity detail, payment images, and then we also can field some custom fields as well, depending on what your needs are. Okay, that's all from my side. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and he will start the demonstration. And Eric, I'm gonna stop sharing, and you can share your screen.
So everyone should be able to see. Welcome to Plate IQ, Ron. So yeah, good intro, Josh. Essentially, very high level for everyone. Plate IQ, we're an end-to-end AP and payments tool. So at our core, we digitize invoices, map and code them to the appropriate accounting dimension, general ledger, job code, department, class, inventory item, however you have it built out in your accounting system. And then we give you a way to facilitate those payments to vendors. So we actually use a couple of pieces of technology The first being OCR and the second being AI machine learning. There are a lot of AP tools out there that utilize an OCR element, but really what separates us is having the AI elements to understand wholly what the invoice is and where it needs to be allocated to. So today I'm going to show you how to actually create a true automated accounting or AP experience. But the dashboard I'll be showing and sharing with everyone today is the administrator account. So this account here has the full look into what Plate IQ can do, and you have the full control over that. If you have multiple entities, properties, departments, those can be organized in the top left corner. You have all your features above and all of what you need to do on the main dashboard here. The reason I mentioned administrative permissions is because we have a way to give anyone who would be involved in the AP process on your team a way to come in here and have an impact. So obviously we don't want everyone to have the full strengths and permissions of an administrator would, but you can create and customize user responsibilities directly into the system, depending on every single metric you can do in Plate IQ. So maybe it's just uploading invoices. Maybe it's just approving invoices or getting the reporting tool or paying bills. All of that is completely customizable based off of what you want your business and workflows to look like. But the first thing we need to do to create a true automated experience is to upload invoices. So we give you 4 methods of upload into Plate IQ. The first is going to be the way to bulk scan. So if you have a scanner on premise, you can bulk scan 5, 10, 50, 500 invoices at a time, save it to a PDF or JPEG, just put it right here, and Plate IQ will do all of the mapping, sorting, and coding of those invoices. So my recommendation is just if you have a scanner, just dump a bunch of paper in, send it to Plate IQ. They can be coffee stained, upside down. It doesn't really matter how they look. We're going to process the toughest invoices and the easiest ones. Your second method is going to be a entity or location specific email address. So we can have vendors send invoices directly to Plate IQ. They can be forwarded from a current AP address. But as soon as they hit this invoice bucket, they begin that processing through our platform. Your third method is going to be your mobile app. So take a picture on your smartphone, upload it to Plate IQ, the whole process ensues from there. And we actually have a full suite mobile app as well. So you can approve bills, pay bills directly from your phone. The fourth method is a vendor-based way, which is known as EDI or electronic data interchange. Essentially broadline vendors. If you think of like the Cisco's of the world, the Staples of the world, Nuco, Ausco, right? All of the larger vendors you may be working with today, we have the ability to ingest those invoices directly into the system. So upon the delivery of goods and services to each one of your locations or properties, Plate IQ will have that invoice directly into our system, automatically mapped and coded in real time. So completely instant, completely paperless. So between those 4 uploads, we want to look at how we can create as many efficiencies as possible. Typically with a Plate IQ user, we see that 89% of your invoices can flow through an electronic way. But once those invoices have been uploaded, they've gone through our OCR and AI machine learning mapping process. They then will live here in your workflow queue. So because we actually are reading and understanding everything on the invoice, we're able to filter and look and index this by any definition of the law. So I can search by different date types, date ranges, specific vendors, general ledgers, departments, issue types, document types. I could search by invoice total, vendor name, item name. So for this group here that I pulled up, they have 140,000 invoices here, and I can look for a single item like avocado. And from 100,000, down to 455 invoices, I could pick an invoice here. And then this begins to show the core competency of what we do. So we have that physical document that you uploaded on the left and all of the digitization that Plate IQ did on the right. Now, some standard information like all the header detail. Which vendor is this referring to, or is it tagged to in your system? Or which location part of your portfolio is this involved with? It has your subtotal, your due date, which helps understand net terms, your invoice number. All of this information helps prevent duplicates from being uploaded. And then the core competency on the AP side is we're actually able to understand your line level detail and then map it and code it to the appropriate dimension. So we pull your chart of accounts over your vendor list over from Intact and Sage 300, and we begin teaching the system on where invoices and items need to go. So this group here, they're coding, this clam to a seafood general ledger, avocado to produce. We're going to teach the system your methodologies, but all the other information comes over as well. SKU, unit, price, quantity, and total. And at the end of the day, all this information is yours. So if you have administrative access, you can come in here and edit anything, but Plate IQ completely process this invoice for you. Not to get too much in the weeds on a call like today, but there's all sorts of different things we can do on an invoice. We could split items between different accounts. We could split invoices between different locations or properties or entities, but we give you the full scale way to create an automated process on the front side of the invoice rather than after the fact. Other things to notice on this invoice, primarily, we will look to send GL summaries over into your system, but again, that can depend on what you need exported. We could see who could be an approver on an invoice like this, but I'll get to approvals more specifically in a second. And then we have a history tool, which shows the audit trail or the life cycle of an invoice. So here we actually are able to see, hey, Melissa uploaded an invoice. 30 minutes later, this 4-page yellow copy faint invoice was processed by Plate IQ. We could see that someone came in and actually deleted an item, but this invoice was ultimately approved and exported into their system. So as a user, I can go ahead and flag and communicate internally. Remote work is huge right now. Not everyone is in the office all the time. It's hard to get in touch with maybe someone who uploaded this invoice or someone whose department this is, where I can just tag them right here and say, Amanda, hey, what's going on? Are we receiving a credit? Or, are we awaiting additional services? Whatever the case is, Amanda will get a notification through her email and through her mobile app directly back to this invoice so she can resolve what goes on before it gets exported into your accounting software. So it's a great way to have that internal communication in all in one place. And I mentioned earlier, we're able to process the tough invoices as well. So Plate IQ not just reads, standardized invoices that have text on it, but also can read edits on invoice as well as handwritten invoices in general. So here we could actually see that items were received for our invoice here, and we actually returned 2 of them. So Plate IQ will understand that, and it can take that into its processing. The total was crossed off. So instead of having the 394.15 in your bottom right here, we actually can see that Plate IQ retabbed this to 319.26 and deleted those 2 items. So whether it's a paper invoice with handwritten detail or edits on the invoice, we have the ability to pick up all that detail. So that's the digitization portion. Now I'm going to walk through the typical AP workflow. So now keep in mind, this specific workflow that I'm showing you right now is for non-PO invoices. After I get through the workflow here, I'm going to pass it over to Skylar to talk about the PO side, and then we'll finish up with payments. But for your non-PO invoices, they're going to go through a pretty standard workflow that's designed to fit what you guys need. So the first bucket we'll see here is your needs attention bucket. And inside needs attention, there's multiple things why Plate IQ can flag you. Hey, this invoice needs your specific attention. Maybe it's an unmapped item, so we've never seen that item before, or it's a new vendor, or no document actually was uploaded. So there's all sorts of reasons why we'll flag this. And at the end of the day, we don't want a software like this to make business decisions for you. So that's what prompts you to come into your needs attention bucket and resolve them. But if we have an unmapped item or a new vendor, it's pretty simple to come in here and just teach the system. Again, this is an AI learning tool. So we have the ability to teach the system consistencies. So if this trip charge is always going to go to miscellaneous expense, I can teach the system, hey, every single time this item or this invoice in general comes in, we can automatically allocate these invoices or items to a certain place. If it's 100th to 5,000th time that item or invoice comes in, it's going to go to the correct place. Or maybe it's just this one time or it's inconsistent. So once we create those rules, Plate IQ then begins learning your process. However, most of your invoices are going to go to your pending approval bucket. So when we set up our rules and we set up our approval policies, invoices are going to flow to John's approval or Steve's approval in their bucket here. But as an administrator, we're able to see all of the other outstanding invoices in the approval queue. And we even give you the ability to look at where invoices are log jammed by which people. So it gives a full report and control over this process to understand, hey, I have let's say Irene here, who has one invoice over 5 days old. We need to send her a notification to get this approved because we need to get this paid. But how we set up these approval policies are very powerful. So we can set them off of a number of conditions like the different properties or locations you have, or groups, or as a company as a whole. We also can create the conditions off of specific things like vendors. Vendors are not, totals, less than, more than, departments, general ledger codes, flags upon upload, or any other policy that you can make up. So if I have an invoice, any invoice over $5,000 needs to be approved not only by the person who received it, but also by someone in the accounting team. I can go ahead and create that policy right here. So I can adjust the approval amount. So both of these individuals have to approve it. I can even create escalation days. So maybe after 2 days, this invoice automatically goes to Amanda after Adelpho. She needs to approve it, and we need to get this out and paid. So there's all sorts of different ways that we can design this that's necessary to fit your specific workflows you have in mind today. Once these policies are set up, and once your invoices are flowing through Plate IQ, they automatically fly to the right person. And when the right person's hands, they can go ahead and approve these invoices individually. They could approve them in bulk. But as soon as they're approved, they'll jump into your approved bucket. Once they're approved, they're ready to be automatically exported into your accounting software. Specifically for Intact, what we have is an API integration there. So all of the information on the invoice will be sent automatically on a timer over to Intact. So maybe on the hour, at the end of every 5 minutes. Specifically for Sage 300, we built out a CSV custom template for you to design to fit exactly what specs would be needed to integrate with. So we'll take that into Plate IQ, we'll build that for you, and then we can send all of that information into Sage 300. Before I hand this back over to Skylar, there is one other feature before we jump into payments as well that I like to show, and that's our statements feature. So typically when we look at, a lot of the companies we work really well with is they're getting a lot of invoices, but they're also getting a lot of statements. And typically at the end of every month or at the end of the period, it's really tough to reconcile those. So we give you a way to upload the statement into Plate IQ, and Plate IQ will actually begin cross-referencing which invoices are in the system versus which ones are missing, or if the totals are mismatched. So whatever the case is, Plate IQ will flag this in red for you and say, hey, we have 2 missing invoices, or in this case, 2 missing credits. So I can go ahead and press in the top right corner, email vendor. The vendor email populates, asking your vendor to send these missing invoices directly to your Plate IQ address. And as we know from one of our upload methods, as soon as it hits this address, it begins the processing through Plate IQ, getting mapped, getting coded, ultimately getting approved, but reconciled as well. So it's a great way to clean up your month-end close process, specifically about not overpaying and underpaying vendors as well. That is essentially our AP workflow. Like I said, I'm going to now hand the mic over to Skylar to talk about our PO matching process, and then he's going to give it back to me to finish up here in our vendor pay center. So Skylar, I'm going to throw this over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eric. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. This is our new purchase ordering system, purchase order matching, purchase ordering, creation, kind of you name it. So the brains behind this was there's a separate workflow that happens in most businesses and use cases before what Eric showed, right? And that's the actual creation of a purchase order, which is the reason we have an invoice in the first place. So we kind of developed this system to capture that area. So that way we had a system that was basically able to handle the whole end-to-end workflow of creating a purchase order, receiving it, paying your invoice, and then exporting that, right? So we're going to begin on the left side here. You'll see several columns over here, which we call buckets. The first bucket is create purchase order. Here we allow the user to create a purchase order. We generate a purchase order number and or allow the user to create their own. You can then select your actual location for your account of where this purchase order is from. For just all intents and purposes, this one only has one location. You could then select your order date over here, select your vendors that are tied to your actual location. And then over here, we'd have your vendor email, and then you can type any message to your vendor. From here, would have a drop-down description based upon actual vendors. These items would be keyed from your invoices previously, so you can kind of go in there and select, I want water, and then there would essentially be a drop-down because you already have this tied to a vendor where water would be associated, and you have your actual item number, your quantity, and your price associated. But say for some reason you've never ordered that item, you can then kind of type it in yourself and enter any item SKU that you know of from the actual vendor catalog list and throw in a price there, right? So there's two areas that we kind of understand when it comes to purchase orders. One is the creation of a purchase order. The next is the actual ingestion of purchase order information. So let's just say that you use a procurement system or you use a different ERP to create your purchase orders and you want to move that data over to Plate IQ. We have the ability to understand what that purchase order ingestion looks like. So essentially, once you create that purchase order in your procurement system or your ERP, we have several ERPs that we do integrate with. The Sage Intacct is one of them. And basically setting up that integration, we can then ingest that purchase order data. So essentially, after you create a purchase order, or say we successfully capture that data that was created in another system from a purchase order, that'll land in this receive bucket. So in this receive bucket, you'll see your purchase order numbers are on the left, your dates, your vendors associated, and the location associated with your total amount. This is where the bucket kind of contains all of your purchase orders, where you can then go in and create receipts based upon them. This is for what you call a three-way match business, where they essentially take a purchase order, create a purchase order, receive that, create a receipt. Once the invoice comes in, they can accurately match all three documents to each other to make sure that what they ordered is what they got and is what they're paying. Right. So this is for accurate reconciliation, just to make sure that you're not wasting any money, to make sure that you're, paying all your due diligence, to make sure that you've got all your items associated. One thing to mention is we are not actually doing inventory. We're just creating a receipt based upon that inventory. Right. So say somebody is standing at a dock and the truck backs in and they say, okay, here's my order. They will essentially pull up Plate IQ either on their mobile device, and this is mobile compatible, and or we have an app, and or they go back to the computer in the office and do their receiving from there. So you would go ahead and click on your actual purchase order and you see this is the item that I ordered. I can then receive it. This will auto populate for the total amount. I can then also change this to 1 and it'll automatically capture the amount. I'm going to show one that I did. So this is what you call a partial received purchase order. So essentially I received these 3 items. However, the quantity was 4 and I only got 2 of it. So therefore I have 2 outstanding. So I can then, once this order comes in, click this and that would auto populate this bucket, which would mean I have my total amount accurately captured. So in Plate IQ, we have the ability to understand multiple receipts to one purchase order and multiple invoices to one purchase order for the instance of a partially received purchase order. So we can accurately tie all that information back to the original source, which is the purchase order, and then move along the actual workflow. So let's just say you went ahead and you received this purchase order. That would then fall into this link bucket. So this link bucket is full of receipts now. Now, essentially what a receipt is just a carbon copy of a purchase order. However, it's basically saying this is what I got from that purchase order. So there could be differentiations in the actual quantity, right? So the next thing that we want to do is click on an actual purchase or click on an actual receipt. So I'll go ahead and click on this one. On the left, you'll see the items that we got. And this is actually from that previous purchase order. So this is the partially received receipt. And then right over here on the right would be invoices that came into Plate IQ. Now we give the ability to choose actual invoices that come into Plate IQ based upon the vendor and the date range. So that's how we can accurately match an option to select an invoice and link it to a receipt. For this instance, we have the purchase order date and the invoice date that came in. we capture the actual vendor. So we would then go ahead and link this and click link, and that would accurately marry these two documents together. Here's an instance down here where we have a few invoices that match that date range compared to one actual receipt. We can then go ahead and click on this. You'd see an actual picture of your invoice. And you see, okay, well, this item description matches this item description. The price matches each other. This must be a link. So then I can go ahead and click link. From there, once you link or essentially marry a receipt and an invoice together, you would go through an actual workflow. This is where I want to take a minute and explain what we did over here. So this is what you call a flexible workflow, which means that we give the actual user the ability to dictate to Plate IQ what they do once they actually link documents. So essentially, during discovery, what we found out as a team was that there are no two real businesses that do the same workflow. And what I mean by that is, if something were to be wrong, something didn't come in on time, something was overpriced, something changed, maybe the shipping cost was more than expected, each individual business has their own checks and balances of going through that. And what I mean by that is, you know, maybe you want to escalate or flag that. Some people would say, well, I have an escalation type of procedure, or I have a flag type of procedure where I have to go ahead and, you know, alert somebody over in accounting or alert the procurement manager. So we allow the users to create as many different buckets as they want in this workflow area, name them whatever they want. And what's very cool is right now we're working on a rules engine, which is basically a trigger and an action system. So, and that's a way to automate this whole process. So if something were to come into the workflow that the system recognizes as a flaw because it was programmed that way, say, you know, we have a threshold on a certain vendor between $25, which means if what I ordered, the purchase order doesn't necessarily match the invoice that came in, but it's within a $25 threshold, I can go ahead and automatically trigger that to be essentially matched and approved to be paid, because I know that the vendor always is raising or lowering their prices dependent upon the economy and market. If it's outside of that threshold, you know, I want it to land in this outside threshold bucket. And this basically says, you know, because I want it to land in this outside threshold bucket, I need to alert my manager, and they would essentially get an email and they would come and check this out and figure out what the root cause of this issue is. So that's something we're really kind of narrowing in on from a rules engine perspective. And that's something that's currently being created and should be shipped very soon. And that'll just optimize this whole experience. But essentially, once going back to this new bucket, once a receipt and an invoice have been linked together, you can go ahead and click on this, and then you can say, oh, okay, well, on the left, I have my receipt details. On the right, I have my invoice details. I notice that these are the same items. I notice that the prices are all good, and I notice that they all match up. So what I can do from here is I can actually select a state. Because this is all manual and I actually haven't programmed my rules engine to maybe understand that, well, if total matches total, if these both documents match, I want to automatically move that into the matched bucket, because as you can see here, this is in the new bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and move this to the matched bucket. We are now automatically transitioned into the match bucket. It's still in the same screen. However, you can see that the details here have been matched. So going back to our new workflow, you can see all of these are waiting to be matched. So these are all kind of in the pipeline, ready to be moved. And basically, I can go ahead and transition different scenarios out from each other. Say, you know, I was emailed by my team that I need to go check this out. This is outside threshold. I'm going to go ahead and call the vendor and say, okay, everything's fine. I can now go ahead and move that into the match, and that will be okay and be ready to be paid for. In this match bucket, something that you'll also notice is we have a link to the actual invoice number. And when we click this, so this is an actual picture of a real invoice here, this is actually a receipt, but what Eric was showing you, we're pretty much back to where Eric was demoing, and except you'll see an extra kind of box over here, which shows the receipt details. So when you're going through that core product, our core product here, and doing your mapping and making sure your invoice is ready to be paid, you can also see what's going on in the actual linking area. So we can see, okay, this has been matched. The receipt details are great. I have a receipt number. I have a receipt date. I have a receipt total. This total matches the actual invoice total, aside from tax. So that's added on. I can notice that. I can even add that if I need to. Therefore, I can go ahead and move about my actual workflow and export this and do whatever I need to do with it. So that's actually the end of the process with our PO matching system. One thing I do want to note is we are actually creating the ability, and this is coming very, very soon as well and already in the works. We're creating the ability to actually auto link certain invoices to a receipt. So if I know for sure the variables match up, the system knows that, it will then auto link these so they will not stay dormant in link bucket until somebody manually comes in and moves them and links them together. This will automatically link and get pushed into the actual workflow bucket. So what this means is a lot of invoices come with an actual purchase order number. And you can see, even though this is a receipt, it's still married to the original purchase order number. So I can actually go back and see the actual purchase order. What this means is if the invoice has a purchase order number on it, the receipt will automatically recognize that and be linked and or married to that invoice, dependent upon the actual purchase order number on the invoice. If for some reason the purchase order number is not on the invoice, we will look at different variables such as the date it was placed, the date it came in, the vendor ID, and the vendor name. We can then either link that or show possible links, which we already do in that link bucket. And then you would essentially go through your actual workflow and end up in your matched bucket, which is sort of the end of the road with purchase order matching. That is all I have from purchase order matching. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Eric.
So to kind of realign, invoices have been ingested through Plate IQ. They've been mapped, they've been coded, they've been going through your approval routing, they've been matched to a PO. All of that information is accurate and has been exported into your accounting system at this point. Your outstanding bills, the ones that you still need to pay, so ones that didn't come offline payments or cash on delivery or through a different payment or credit card method, can be facilitated through Plate IQ. So we facilitate payments in 3 different ways: by check, by ACH, and by virtual card. So depending on what methods your vendors accept, we are able to facilitate them in that fashion. For your viewer, for your viewership, right, we can actually locate and create a check run based off of different locations, departments, however you have your bank account set up in your system. And we can come up here and begin a check run. So quite simply, I can just start clicking off the vendors that I want to pay. And in the top right corner, we can actually see the total start to accrue. I can even refer to respective invoices inside the system. So maybe I want to pay the first 2, but let's review the third. Okay, I don't want to pay this invoice. I can go ahead and create that payment. As soon as that payment is created, it's going to jump into your pending approval bucket. So a specific person can go ahead and approve these payments to be facilitated by Plate IQ. But we also can schedule payments off of specific terms like due dates or your net terms. And we even have the ability to implicate the early pay discount. So if you have net 15/7, right, we're able to account for all of that. So if I wanted to schedule a payment, I could go ahead and just simply schedule them out. So maybe I'm out of the office next week, or maybe I just want to get ahead or schedule them so they can beat their terms. I can go ahead, schedule these payments. We can see ACH tag in blue, V card tag in green, and then a blank will mean that's going to be facilitated by a check. From this view, we can mark certain payments as paid. We can pay certain bills partially, or we can even put certain payments on hold until we await additional services. So if I schedule these payments, again, they're going to jump into your pending approval bucket for the appropriate approver to come in, review this, review who they're paying, maybe review the invoice, review all the necessary information before Plate IQ facilitates it. Once it's been approved by someone or organization, they will then populate right here in your scheduled payments, your pending export back into your accounting software. So all that payment detail we send back into your system. And then your payment calendar, which gives you a holistic way to view spend on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month basis. So I actually can go back in time and see on March 29th, okay, I want to see the physical check that was cut to this vendor. So I can come in, right, see the remittance information, but see the front and the back of the check. Plate IQ will facilitate these transactions. So we'll, cut the checks, put them in postage, stamp and send them out. So you guys no longer have to do any of that manual work. And then we export all of this detail back in your system. For context, we're also positive pay compliant for your checks. And we don't hold money into a Plate IQ escrow account. So when your checks are facilitated, when they get debited from your account, that is when the vendor has cashed that check. The same is going for virtual cards as well. That's a very short version of payments. There's a lot of other indicators that we can get into specific to you, but at a very high level, that's exactly what payments looks to do. And that about wraps up our demonstration.
And it looks like that's all I'm seeing for questions. So I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again all for joining us. If you do have any additional questions, please reach out to your assigned account manager or email us at am@acumenfl.com. Acumen will be planning to run more biweekly webinars throughout the summer. So please be on the lookout for invitations and let us know what topics you would like to see in the future. I want to say thank you again for Plate IQ for putting on the great presentation. And if you'd like more information about them, then please reach out to Acumen. And with that, we hope to see you guys all again on our next webinar Wednesday.